My name is Avery Lynn, I'm 28, and my apartment used to sound like peace. On most mornings, the city hummed below my sixth-floor windows. Espresso machines sputtering, buses sighing, rain deciding whether to fall or think about it first. The usual Seattle indecision. I'd code from my second bedroom 3 days a week, headset on, fingers moving. That room was my office, my boundary line, the quiet square of air that meant you're safe to think here. I paid for that boundary. I cleaned it. I built my routines around it. I guarded it like a secret. Then my sister Nicole asked me to write her name on the lease. It's just credit rebuilding, she said, hands cupped around a latte, like we were in a movie about cheerfully solving adult problems. A few months on a lease line will bump my score. I'm not moving in, Avery, I promise. I'll even sign something that says I'll remove myself whenever you ask. She'd had an emergency surgery last year. Medical bills bruised her credit. I knew that. I also knew the way Nicole could tilt a story just enough to make the edges look softer than they were. She'd learned early that if you spoke with certainty, some people stopped asking questions. Our parents loved that certainty. Family helps family, Mom said, calling separate from Nicole, her voice bright with relief at the idea of me doing the right thing. We met at Harrison Properties. The manager, Sandra, was kind in a polished way, the kind that wears comfortable flats and reads policies like recipes. If you add her, Sandra said, both of you have full tenant rights and full responsibility. She glanced up. Just so we're clear. We're clear, I said. I was. I thought I was. Nicole squeezed my arm. It's administrative. Think of it like when you help someone co-sign a car. You're not driving it. She smiled. Cost you nothing. I heard the words. I also heard what wasn't there. No talk of utilities. No talk of guests. A promise that lived in air and kindness and maybe a text thread. Paper is louder than air, my boyfriend Evan likes to say. Get it in writing. He's practical like that, shaped by a breakup with his ex, Tori, who used "you said" the way some people use knives. I told myself I'd draft a side agreement with Nicole afterward. I told myself it would be fine. We signed. Nicole paid for lunch. I walked home feeling like I'd outrun a small worry. 2 weeks later, I turned onto my block and saw a U-Haul idling by the curb. It was rush hour in and out of the building, neighbors with tote bags, a guy wrestling a bicycle up the stairs, someone's golden retriever tapping its nails on the lobby tile. I waited for an elevator that forgot how to be one, then took the stairs 2 at a time, breath sharpening as I hit my floor and saw it. Boxes stacked by my door, Nicole L., scrawled in marker, arrows pointing up as if the universe needed directions. Nicole stood inside my apartment, hair knotted up, directing 2 movers like a forewoman on a cheerful scam. Avery, she said, beaming. Perfect timing. Can you hold the door? The couch is a beast. What are you? The word died and came back colder. What are you doing? My roommate situation imploded, she said, like weather. But it's perfect because I'm already on the lease and your extra bedroom's a great size. We'll shift your desk to the living room corner. I measured. It totally works. My office, my square of breathing, was suddenly a math problem and a box spring. We had an agreement, I said. You said you wouldn't move in. She slid her phone out like a badge. We have a lease. I'm a tenant. Tenant rights. A shrug. It's temporary. And come on, we're sisters. The movers carried in a dresser. One brushed a scuff down the hallway and didn't look back. A lamp I didn't recognize blinked at me from my rug. I felt myself become smaller in my own doorway. I'm calling the office, I said, not loud, just steady. Sandra confirmed it. Without Nicole's written consent, I couldn't remove her. Without both signatures, I couldn't modify the lease. I know this isn't the answer you want, she said gently, but she's a legal tenant now. Nicole was in the office, unfurling a duvet. We should talk about splitting the rent, she called. 50-50 is fair, since we're both on it. Utilities? She paused, as if selecting fairness from a shelf. I mean, those are kind of included, right? In what we already pay? No. It came out thinner than I wanted. No, they aren't. She considered that like a menu item she could send back. Okay, let's discuss it when I'm not mid-move. Marcus appeared then. Marcus, the boyfriend I'd met twice in doorways and never in daylight. He kissed Nicole like a period and lifted the other end of the couch. Hey, Avery, he said. Nice place. My throat tightened. This isn't happening, I thought, and then realized it was happening in real time, like code compiling into something I didn't write. I watched my life reflow around someone else's choices. By 9, my office was colonized. Bed, dresser, boxes labeled skincare and winter. And shoes. There were 3 boxes for shoes. There are always 3 boxes for shoes. My desk was pressed into a living room corner, cables arcing across the floor like tripwires. Nicole swept past with a stack of sweaters and studied the thermostat. Don't, I said. It's hot, she said. It's set to 72, I said. She fanned herself. So we'll do 70. The electric bill would hum a different number next month. I could feel it like weather pressure behind my eyes. At 10, I texted Evan. She moved in. Like actually moved in. He called immediately. Breathe, he said. Document everything. Don't yell. Get dates, photos, any text promising she wouldn't move in. I don't have it in writing, I said, the sentence tasting like my own fault. Then start now, he said. Everything from tonight forward is paper. I stood in the hallway and took photos. The boxes, the couch, the office door, now slightly ajar with Nicole's throw blanket peeking out. I emailed myself a timeline from my personal account. Subject line, Nicole move as in, unauthorized. Paper is louder than air. Nicole wandered out with a face mask on, mint green and unbothered. By the way, she said, I gave Marcus a spare key. Is that cool? He's here a lot. No, I said instantly. It's not. I'm a tenant, she said, that word again, a lever. I have guest rights. Guests aren't co-residents, I said. The lease caps overnight stays. She blinked. You read the whole lease? Like that was quaint. I did, I said. Her eyes cooled. So did I. Behind her, my second bedroom breathed differently, more crowded, less mine. A plant I didn't recognize stood in my window, its leaves claiming light. I used to consider mine by default. I felt the grief of a little funeral for something that didn't have a name. The ritual I'd built around 6 feet of desk, the way the light hit the monitor at 4. Rent is due on the 1st, I said finally, voice dull with the new math of my life. If we're splitting, it's half by the 1st. Utilities by the 5th after I send you the statement. Totally, she said, like a promise, like a dare. At midnight, the building quieted and the apartment did not. Boxes thumped softly in the office. Drawers slid like whispers. I lay awake on the couch, because my bed felt like the only thing I still controlled, and I couldn't make myself walk down the hall to it. When I finally stood, the living room light was on. No one had turned it off. In the morning, the kitchen had been reorganized. My mugs moved, my spice rack in a new place that was just more logical. A sticky note in Nicole's rounded handwriting labeled a shelf, shared. My coffee maker was the same, but the coffee tasted like someone had breathed on it first. I opened my laptop and created folders. Lease, utilities, incidents, photos. I wrote a log entry for the day. Nicole asked me to add her, for the day we signed, for the night of the boxes. I CC'd my personal email and a cloud drive. My apartment had become a case file. At lunch, my phone buzzed. Mom, how's it going with Nicole? She said you were a bit tense. Be kind, sweetie. She's had a rough year. I stared at the text until the words blurred. Then I typed back. I'm being clear, not cruel. I'll call this weekend. Nicole drifted by in a robe, hair in a towel, humming, a queen in a castle she'd found unlocked. We should talk internet, she said. I'll need the Wi-Fi password. After you send me your half of rent, I said. She laughed. You know I'm good for it. I didn't know that. Not anymore. Not in paper. That evening, Sandra returned my call. I'm sorry, she said again. Without her agreement, your options are limited until renewal. Is there anything I can do? I asked, and my voice cracked on. I like the word had fallen from a height. Document, she said. If there are violations, we can act. But be careful. The law protects tenants, even difficult ones. After we hung up, I set up a camera in the living room, a black bead tucked near the bookshelf. I texted Nicole to disclose it. FYI, cam in common area for safety/documentation. She responded with a single eye roll emoji and, a minute later, a boomerang on her story. 2 shiny apartment keys clinking like champagne. The caption, New Chapter. I stared at that pink heart, that tiny ceremony of theft dressed as joy. A chapter, sure, just not the one she thought she'd written. Okay, I told the room that used to be mine. Then we'll write it back. By the second week, the apartment had learned a new rhythm that didn't include me. Marcus arrived like weather. Sometimes a drizzle of footsteps at 6 p.m., sometimes a thunderclap at 1 a.m. He let himself in with the key Nicole had mentioned after the fact, then tossed it onto my entry table like a flag. He was polite in the thin way a person is polite when he believes the space is already his. Evening, he'd say, and the way he said it suggested the evening belonged to him. He and Nicole colonized the living room with a quick, practiced ease, his gaming tower blooming with LED, a nest of controllers on my coffee table, a headset hanging from my floor lamp like a second head. They chose a corner for the console and called it their setup, as if my TV had submitted an application to join them. Screens glowed. The sound of digital gunfire became the apartment's heartbeat. I built a new habit. Screenshots of bank transactions, photos of overflowing shoe racks at the door, time-stamped clips from the living room camera. On the 5th day, I sent Nicole an email with the subject line, Rent plus Utilities. Rent, half. X, due first. Electric last month. Y, half, due 5th. Water, Z, half, due 5th. Please confirm receipt. I CC'd my personal account and a folder that was starting to look like a testimony. Nicole responded 13 hours later with, Girl, chill. I said I'd pay. I've been slammed. I replied with, Please confirm dates. She heart-reacted the message and did not answer the question. Evan came over that night with Thai takeout and the kind of patience that doesn't try to fix a storm, just stands near you with an umbrella. He's careful with his words. He's learned the cost of the wrong ones. Look, he said, setting containers on my relabeled shared shelf. There's the feelings layer. Betrayal, disrespect, the grief of losing your space. And there's the procedure layer, what the lease says, what the law allows. Don't let the feelings erase the procedure. She's counting on that. She keeps saying tenant rights, and I said, like a talisman. She says it and the room rearranges itself. Then you say lease obligations, he said, and you say it on paper. When he left, he kissed my forehead and paused at the door. One more thing, he added. Tori DM'd me today. He grimaced before I could. I didn't answer. But she posted a story about some people weaponizing kindness, and the timing felt pointed. Tori follows my sister's page, I remembered. They'd met once at a birthday dinner, traded handles like compliments, and I'd regretted it ever since. He shrugged, apology in his shoulders. It's nothing. Just watch the narrative. She's good at making people feel like the villain for locking their own doors. The next morning, Nicole organized the kitchen again and left a note on the fridge. Rotation. Cleaning tasks. She'd assigned me bathrooms and trash. She gave herself declutter surfaces and vibes. The word vibes on a chore list irritated me more than it should have. That afternoon, I returned to find every candle in the place lit and the thermostat at 70. The electric meter somewhere in the building turned faster. I could hear the expense in it, like a hiss. I drafted another email. Guest policy reminder. Per lease, 7.2. Guests may not stay 14 nights per month. Please advise Marcus's expected overnight schedule so we can ensure compliance. I attached the clause and sent it with a steadiness I didn't feel. Nicole's reply was a text, not an email. Are you seriously counting? He's my boyfriend, Avery. I have the right to have guests. You're being obsessive. I copied the text into a PDF and filed it under incident/VI. That weekend, we tried a conversation. I brewed coffee that tasted like resolve and sat across from Nicole at the table I'd bought with my first bonus out of college. She scrolled while I talked, flicking attention up and down like a porch light. You told me you wouldn't move in, I said, keeping my voice even. You're late on rent. You haven't paid utilities and Marcus is staying most nights. This isn't what we agreed. I didn't move in, she said, which would have been funny if I didn't live here. I adapted. Things changed. My roommate bailed on me. You wanted me to live under a bridge? You have a whole extra room. It isn't extra, I said. It's my office. My job pays for this place. You're a software developer, she said. You can code anywhere. Couch, kitchen, coffee shop. That's the point of remote work. She said it kindly, like a concession, like my work was a flexible hobby that could bend around her reality. I felt the anger rise and tamped it down like a trash bag I didn't want to split. Nicole, I said, softening, because that's what older sisters get trained to do. You manipulated me. She looked up then, finally. Wow, strong word. She set her phone down face up, like proof of nothing. I asked for help. You said yes. That's not manipulation, that's collaboration. Collaboration has consent, I said, not ambush. She stood, rinsed a mug that wasn't hers 3 days ago, and said, "Half the rent is coming. Stop micromanaging me." Then she added, as if remembering to be merciful, "Also, Marcus is going to start buying groceries. That evens it out." By Monday, the power bill arrived, $340, almost double my usual. I stared at the number like it might crack open and confess a mistake. It didn't. I forwarded it to Nicole with the subject line, "Electric, payment due," and a breakdown so simple a child could parse it. She responded, "Seems high. Maybe look into energy-efficient appliances?" The audacity clicked into place like a battery. That night, Marcus streamed until 3 a.m., yelling into his headset with a charisma that made the building's quiet hours feel theoretical. I took note of the time. In the morning, I emailed Sandra, "Potential breach of guest policy, documentation attached." She wrote back, "Received. Keep logging. If we can establish a pattern, we may have options." I liked her use of we. It felt like someone had stepped to my side of the line. At dinner with my parents, my mistake for going, Mom dabbed at her lips and said, "I just think you're being rigid." Dad, quieter, said, "You did put her on the lease, Aves." "Because she told me she wouldn't move in," I said. "She rehearsed that sentence for me. She used my kindness like a crowbar." Mom's eyes went shiny with the version of events where daughters hold hands and bake. "Families ebb and flow," she said. "You're blessed. You have a good job. Don't nickel and dime your sister." I took out my phone, pulled up the power bill, the rent requests, Nicole's chill text, the guest policy clause highlighted in yellow, and set the screen between the salt and pepper. "This isn't nickel and diming," I said. "This is a ledger." Dad looked at the screen, then at me. Something shifted a fraction of a degree. "Pay your share, Nick," he said gently. Mom frowned, startled by his small treason. Back home, my DMs pinged. A name I didn't want to see. Tori. "Hey, I heard from a friend of a friend that you're trying to kick your sister out. Yikes. People are talking. Just checking you're okay." I stared at the message until the dots stopped pulsing. I didn't reply. I took a screenshot and filed /incidents/torydm.pdf. The chorus was warming up, and the opening number cast me as the villain who counts. By the end of the month, Nicole Venmo'd me exactly half the rent, no emoji, no note, 2 days late. She paid nothing toward utilities. When I asked again, she sent a single sentence. Utilities were never discussed when I agreed to the lease. I opened our old messages and saw the blank space where the side agreement should have been. The absence pulsed like a bruise. I booked a short consult with Patricia, the tenant law attorney, a colleague recommended. Patricia's voice was brisk and unsentimental. "You can't force her out," she said, "but you can force accountability. Certified mail for all requests moving forward. Enforce guest limits. And if she refuses to pay utilities, small claims court. You are not powerless. You just can't be impulsive." "Impulsive would feel great," I admitted. "Impulsive is expensive," she said. "Methodical pays." The next morning, 2 envelopes slid into the outgoing mail. Demand for payment, utilities and formal notice, guest limits. I kept copies, snapped photos, logged the time. On the camera, Marcus drifted in at 11:36 p.m., kissed Nicole, dropped his backpack by the couch, and fell onto it like a claim. The timestamp glowed. I wrote it down. At 2 a.m., I lay awake, counting the soft clicks of the thermostat, the tiny noise of money burning. In the dark, the apartment felt like a courtroom where no one could hear me yet. But the record existed. The paper grew. Paper is louder than air. The following week, a neighbor I barely knew, Bryce, the one with the bicycle, caught me in the hall. "Hey, you and your sister did a nice job with the place," he said. "Crazy you guys found it together." "We didn't," I said, the words too quick. "I've lived here 3 years." He blinked, polite confusion clouding his face. "Oh," Nicole said, "never mind." He smiled, apologetic, and rolled his bike away. I stood in the hallway a long time after that, listening to my building breathe. Narrative was spreading like steam under the doors. I pictured Tori's DM, Mom's frown, Dad's almost shift. Then I pictured Patricia's calm voice and Sandra's steady emails. I went inside, opened my binder, and wrote the facts down, one careful line at a time. There's a strange power in documentation. At first, it feels petty, counting nights, listing receipts, recording timestamps. But then the pattern forms, and you see how chaos builds itself when nobody's keeping score. By the end of week 5, my binder had dividers labeled rent, utilities, guests, communication logs, and lease violations. Patricia called it defensible diligence. I called it survival. Every time Marcus stayed overnight, I logged the date and attached a 15-second screenshot from my living room camera feed. Each time Nicole ignored a payment email, I sent a certified letter, not a text, not a DM, to her bedroom door. It wasn't about escalation. It was about clarity. She wanted to play tenant? Fine. I'd play landlord of my own sanity. The breaking point came one humid Thursday evening. I returned from the gym to find Nicole hosting what she called a tiny dinner get-together. 4 people, candles lit, wine open, Marcus at the head of my dining table. My dining table, the one I built myself with a sander and stubbornness during lockdown. "Hope you don't mind, Aves," she chirped, as if this were a shared Airbnb. "It's just friends, not a party." One of her guests waved. "You're the cool sister, right?" I smiled the kind of smile that's mostly teeth. "Sure," I said, "the cool one." Later that night, I found 3 wine stains on my table and a shattered ceramic bowl in the sink. Nicole was already in her room, laughing with Marcus. The smell of red wine and rosemary filled the hallway like a hangover that hadn't started yet. I took photos. Time-stamped. 10:47 p.m. Quiet hours violation. 11:12 p.m. Noise above 60 decibels. My phone decibel app didn't lie. 11:30 p.m. Evidence of damage. The next morning, I compiled everything into an email to Sandra at Harrison Properties. I didn't vent. I documented. Dear Sandra, attached. Please find records of multiple guest overnights exceeding lease limits, recent party activity past quiet hours, and property damage. Photos attached. Per FARDI 7.2 of our lease, I am requesting that management issue a written warning to Ms. Lynn. Please confirm receipt. Best, Avery Lynn. Sandra replied the next afternoon. Hi, Avery. We've reviewed your materials. This constitutes a pattern of violation. We'll contact Ms. Lynn for a compliance reminder. Please continue documenting if the issue persists. Sandra. I almost cried reading the phrase pattern of violation. It sounded like recognition, like someone finally heard what I'd been saying between the lines. That evening, Nicole slammed the front door so hard my framed diploma rattled. Did you seriously report me to the landlord? She demanded, waving her phone. Sandra called me at work. At work, Avery. That's humiliation. You violated the lease, I said evenly. Quiet hours, guest limits, damage. You wanted tenant rights. This is tenant accountability. She pointed a finger like an accusation of character. You're seriously counting the nights my boyfriend sleeps over? What are you, a stalker? I'm a tenant protecting my space, I said, voice calm but steel underneath. You don't get to twist that. Oh my God, you sound like a lawyer, she scoffed. Good, I said, because you'll need to answer to one. Step 2, the payment requests. When she ignored 2 consecutive utility letters, I followed Patricia's advice and filed a small claims case for $470. Her share of 2 months' unpaid bills plus fees. Service papers arrived 2 days later at Nicole's workplace. That evening, I heard the door crash open and the stomp of heels. You sued your own sister? She screamed from the hallway. Over a couple $100? It's $470 actually, I said quietly, meeting her glare. And yes, you wanted equal rights. You get equal responsibility. She looked like she didn't recognize me, like I'd morphed into someone she couldn't guilt anymore. You're pathetic, she spat. You'd rather embarrass me than just be generous for once in your life. You'd rather exploit me than tell the truth, I said. The silence after that sentence was sharp enough to cut something invisible between us. That weekend, my parents called. Mom's tone was weary, the kind that carries disappointment like perfume. Avery, your sister says you dragged her into court. Is that really necessary? Yes, I said. Over utilities? Over boundaries. Dad sighed. You two need to talk this out. Family shouldn't need lawyers. Family shouldn't need leases, I said, and hung up. The court date came quicker than I expected. A rainy Monday morning, fluorescent lights, a judge named Harrison, ironically the same as our property company. I arrived early with my binder, each tab color-coded, receipts clipped, text printed. Nicole arrived 20 minutes late in sweatpants and sneakers, her hair damp and unbrushed, scrolling her phone. When the judge called our names, she spoke first, her tone all charm and complaint. "This is just ridiculous," she began. "My sister's being petty about minor bills. She makes way more money than I do." Judge Harrison raised an eyebrow. "Ms. Lynn, did you agree to pay half of the utilities when you moved in?" Nicole hesitated. "Well, we discussed. Did you agree or not?" "I guess, but have you paid?" "Not yet, but she's been impossible." "That's not relevant," the judge said, cutting through her excuses. "You had an agreement. You benefited from services you didn't pay for. I find in favor of the plaintiff." He signed the judgment, looked directly at Nicole, and said, "Ms. Lynn, you seem to be taking advantage of your sister's initial kindness. That's not what the law protects." The sentence landed like a verdict in a different courtroom, the one between love and betrayal. When we left, Nicole stormed ahead, muttering something about me loving the spotlight. I didn't chase her. I just exhaled, a slow breath that had been waiting for months. That night, I called Patricia. "She lost," I said, "but it doesn't feel like a win." "It's not about winning," Patricia said. "It's about restoring balance. Keep documenting. One more lease violation, and Sandra can start eviction proceedings. She's already leaning in your favor." And so, I doubled down. Every email, every noise complaint, every bill, every guest night, I turned my exhaustion into evidence. Marcus started showing up less, partly because of the warning letter Sandra issued, partly because I'd made it uncomfortable for him. I changed the Wi-Fi password, explaining that since the bill was in my name, non-payers didn't get access. Nicole glared, then paid for her own low-tier internet plan, grumbling about the vibe of capitalism. I removed my streaming subscriptions from the shared TV. I locked my premium coffee beans in my bedroom. Petty? Maybe, but effective. When Nicole ran to our parents again, crying that I'd turned into a cold stranger, Mom tried the sympathy card. I emailed her a PDF. Unpaid utilities, certified letters, timestamps, court ruling, neatly highlighted. A few days later, my cousin Rebecca texted, "Family dinner update. Mom told Nicole to pay her bills. Everyone went quiet. It was something." For the first time in months, I smiled without irony. But peace never lasts long with people like Nicole. 2 weeks later, she threw another small gathering. 8 people this time. Marcus back again. Music pulsing, laughter bleeding through the walls. I filmed 30 seconds on my phone, wrote the date, attached a noise-reading app screenshot, and sent it to Sandra within the hour. Her reply came fast. "Thank you, Avery. Given the repeated violations in court judgment, we have grounds to pursue lease modification focusing on Ms. Lynn's removal. I'll begin the internal process and keep you updated. Sandra." When I closed that email, the exhaustion finally broke. I cried, not out of sadness, but out of relief that someone else saw the map I'd been tracing in the dark. Nicole could keep lying to our family. She could keep telling neighbors this was our place. She could even block me out of conversations that used to belong to us. But she couldn't outrun the paper trail. And for the first time since she moved in, I slept through the night. Because facts, quiet, unemotional, time-stamped facts, were finally louder than her noise. 3 days after the judgment, Sandra called. Her tone was clipped, but compassionate, the kind of voice you develop after years of mediating strangers' disasters. "Avery, I've reviewed your file," she said. "It's extensive." "That's one word for it," I replied. "If Nicole violates the lease again, even a minor infraction, we can move toward a selective eviction, meaning she goes, not you." Selective eviction. 2 words that tasted like hope. For the first time, it felt like there was a path out, not just endurance. That night, I came home to shouting. Marcus and Nicole were mid-argument in the hallway. His duffel bag was open, spilling clothes like a storm had hit it. "You promised me it was temporary," Marcus barked. "It was supposed to be," Nicole yelled back, voice cracking. "But then Avery went nuclear with the paperwork. What was I supposed to do?" They froze when they saw me. Marcus exhaled, shaking his head. "You know what, Nick? I'm done." He turned to me, eyes dull with exhaustion. "Good luck, Avery. You're gonna need it." The door slammed. The echo hung in the air like static. Nicole stood there, jaw tight, face pale. Then she grabbed a glass from the counter and hurled it into the sink. It shattered like punctuation. "Happy now?" she spat. "You want the truth?" I said softly. "Yes, because the only person who's been living a lie here is you." Her eyes narrowed. A warning. "Don't start." "Marcus told me," I said. "He told me you planned this months before you asked me to add you to the lease, that you were already looking for a way in." For a second, something flickered behind her face. Guilt, maybe, or the exhaustion of being seen too clearly. "You don't understand," she whispered. "Then help me," I said. "Explain it." She sank into a chair, shoulders trembling, mascara smudged into small black shadows. "I was broke. My old roommate bailed. The hospital bills, the credit cards, everything was collapsing. I thought if I could just live rent-free for a few months, I could catch up. You have this perfect life, Ava's. Good job, nice apartment. I didn't think it would hurt you to share a little." "Share a little?" I repeated, stunned. "You lied to me. You tricked me into signing legal papers. You stole my home office and turned it into your bedroom. That's not sharing, that's taking." She wiped her eyes, frustrated. "You're acting like I robbed a bank." "You robbed my peace," I said, "and that's worse." The next morning, Sandra emailed a summary of Nicole's violations, attaching photos and timestamps I'd provided. "Pattern established," she wrote. "Ready to file lease modification. I recommend offering her a voluntary release option before escalation." Patricia agreed. "Offer her a way out," she said. "Sometimes leverage works better than punishment." So I did. When Nicole came home that evening, I handed her a folder. Neat, calm, deadly. Inside, a draft agreement prepared by Patricia. "If you agree to remove yourself from the lease," I said, "I'll pay you $1,500 to relocate. 1 month. No more. You leave peacefully, sign the paperwork, and we both move on." She skimmed it, frowning. $1,500? That's not enough. I'll need at least $3,000. First month deposit, movers. "This isn't a negotiation," I said. "It's mercy." Her laugh was sharp. "Mercy? You're paying me to leave the place I live." "You're paying me insanity," I said. "This is the cleanest end you'll get. If not, Sandra starts eviction proceedings next week." That wiped the smirk off her face. She tore open the fridge, grabbed a bottle of wine, and muttered, "You think you're better than me." "No," I said quietly. "Just done." For a week, she avoided me. The apartment existed in uneasy silence, her bedroom door always closed, mine always locked. I'd come home to see packed boxes half filled, then unpacked again. Every morning, she'd glare at the camera in the living room, as if daring it to blink. Then, on day 9, she broke the silence. "I'll take the deal," she said flatly from the doorway. 1 month, $2,500. After I move out. "Good," I said, careful not to show relief. "Patricia will update the paperwork." She hesitated. "You're not happy about this?" "No," I said truthfully. "I'm just free." The final 30 days were slow torture. Nicole followed every rule. Too precisely, almost mockingly. She paid her half of the rent early, labeled all her boxes, and kept Marcus out entirely. It was like living with a ghost who refused to leave until you acknowledged her haunting. Some nights, I heard her crying softly in the office. The same room where I once built projects, planned vacations, and laughed during late-night calls with Evan. I didn't comfort her. Compassion doesn't always mean contact. When the final week arrived, Sandra emailed the move-out checklist. Nicole signed the lease modification. We both signed the release of liability. And on her last day, she handed me the apartment key she'd once photographed for Instagram. "I know you hate me," she said quietly. "I don't hate you," I said, "but I'll never trust you again." She looked down, eyes wet. I really was desperate. "I know," I said, "but desperation doesn't justify deception." She nodded, and for a moment, I almost believed she understood. Then she turned, walked out, and was gone. I paid her $1,500 that night, transfer complete, receipt logged. Sandra confirmed the paperwork was filed. The apartment was legally mine again. After she left, I stood in the middle of the living room and listened to the silence. Real silence. Not broken by the whir of Marcus's headset or the hum of constant resentment. I moved my desk back into the second bedroom. I scrubbed the walls, replaced the curtains, painted the room sage green. The smell of new paint mingled with something like peace. When I told Evan it was over, he smiled and said, "You won the quiet." And somehow, that felt better than any judgment. A week later, Dad called. He'd finally seen the full timeline: the court judgment, the documentation, even the recording of Marcus admitting Nicole's plan. "I owe you an apology," he said simply. Mom was quieter, but softer now. "We didn't know it was that bad." "You didn't want to know," I said gently. "You wanted to believe we were still kids sharing cereal." There was a long pause. Then Mom whispered, "You did the right thing, Avery." For once, that sentence didn't sound like approval. It sounded like closure. Nicole and I haven't spoken since. She blocked me on social media and told relatives I threw her out on the street. Let her. People will always rewrite their failures as someone else's cruelty. Sandra later told me that Harrison Properties had updated their procedures. No tenant additions without dual verification and background checks. "You helped us fix a loophole," she said. "You'd be surprised how often this happens." "Not anymore," I replied. Patricia congratulated me on how thoroughly I'd handled everything. "You did what most people can't," she said. "You stayed rational through emotional sabotage." But I didn't feel victorious, just educated. Because sometimes the real win isn't proving someone wrong. It's learning how not to let them do it again. The next weekend, I threw away the broken bowl Nicole had left behind. The sound of ceramic in the trash bag was oddly satisfying. Then I brewed coffee, from my machine, in my kitchen, at my own rhythm. The apartment smelled like roasted beans and clean paint. Peace, I realized, doesn't always come with silence. Sometimes it comes with boundaries. And after months of hell, that was finally enough. It's been 2 weeks since Nicole's boxes rolled out of my doorway, and I'm still learning how to breathe without bracing. The apartment feels like itself again, mine again. Even the air seems to have changed texture. When I wake up now, there's sunlight in my office again. Not the ghost of her perfume, not the sound of someone else's phone alarm. Just quiet and the slow hum of my computer coming back to life. I moved my desk back against the wall, hung up the same corkboard I'd packed away months ago, and placed my favorite plant by the window. The one Nicole nearly killed when she borrowed the pot for her makeup brushes. It's thriving again. So am I. That first weekend, I invited Evan over. He walked through the door, glanced around, and said the simplest, kindest thing anyone could have said. "Welcome home." I didn't realize until then how much I'd needed someone to say it. We spent the evening repainting the living room, a calm, muted gray blue. Between strokes, Evan read aloud from the notes I'd written on my lessons learned list, laughing softly at some, pausing at others. "Number 1, he read, get everything in writing." I grinned. "That's not just a note, that's scripture now." He nodded. "Number 2, trust but verify." "Number 3, I said, never underestimate someone who smiles while they lie." He looked up. "That one's going to sting for a while, isn't it?" "Yeah," I said, "but stings teach." When the paint dried, we opened a bottle of wine, not to celebrate her leaving, but to celebrate what stayed. Peace, order, sanity, light. A few days later, I got a call from Sandra. "Avery, just wanted you to know we've updated our tenant policy," she said. "No one can be added to an existing lease without written consent from both tenants and management review. Your case helped us close that gap." I laughed. Glad my disaster became someone else's lesson. Sandra chuckled. "You'd be surprised. It happens more often than you think, but few people handle it as gracefully as you did." Gracefully. That word still feels foreign. Nothing about this felt graceful. It felt like surviving a slow-motion storm. But maybe grace isn't about calmness. Maybe it's about not letting the storm make you cruel. Mom called later that night. She was quieter than usual, her voice stripped of the forced brightness she used to use when pretending everything was fine. "I talked to Nicole today," she said. "She's trying to figure things out. Small studio, new job at a call center. She says she's sorry, but she's embarrassed." I nodded, even though Mom couldn't see it. "I don't want her to suffer," I said. "I just want her to learn." "You always were the strong one," Mom whispered. "No," I said softly, "just the one who finally stopped apologizing." After that call, I sat on my balcony for a long time, watching the city lights shimmer against the sound of light rain. The same rain that once tapped against the glass the night Nicole moved in. It sounded different now, less like intrusion, more like rhythm. A few weeks later, I started therapy. Patricia had suggested it when the case ended. My therapist, Marla, asked me something in the first session that I'll never forget. "Why did you keep fighting so hard to prove the truth?" she asked. "Because if I didn't, I'd start believing her version," I said. She nodded. "Good. Then you already understand the difference between peace and appeasement. That sentence landed like a revelation. One evening, I found an envelope in my mailbox. No return address, just my name in familiar handwriting. Inside was a note. Avery, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to destroy what you built. I thought I could fix things after the fact like I always do. I know you don't owe me forgiveness, but thank you for making me face myself. N. I folded it neatly, tucked it between the pages of my binder-marked closure, and left it there. Some apologies don't need replies. I've since rebuilt the second bedroom into something more than an office. During the day, it's where I work. At night, it's a music room. The guitar I bought during those stressful months still sits on its stand. My chords are sloppy, my rhythm inconsistent, but when I play, the sound bounces gently off clean walls that finally listen. Sometimes Evan hums along from the kitchen. Sometimes I just sit there, no music, no noise, just me and the stillness. The same stillness that used to feel like loneliness now feels like ownership. Looking back, I can see all the red flags I ignored. Nicole's credit rebuild story that sounded rehearsed. Her instant defensiveness when I mentioned written agreements. Even her casual, we're family, it's fine tone, the one that hides manipulation behind affection. But I don't regret helping her. I regret thinking love meant saying yes when I should have said no. If there's anything I've learned, it's this. Family can be both the reason you fall and the reason you learn to stand taller. Helping isn't wrong, but help without boundaries isn't kindness, it's self-erasure. Nicole didn't teach me how to be angry. She taught me how to be specific. Specific about what I allow. Specific about what I sign. Specific about what peace costs. Last weekend, Evan and I hosted a small dinner, the first real guests since all of it. Laughter filled the space without tension. When someone asked if I lived alone, I smiled. Yes, I said, and it's perfect. As the night ended, I stood by the door where Nicole once dragged in her boxes. For a moment, I could still see the chaos that used to stand there. Her voice, her excuses, her storms. Then the vision dissolved. Now there's just quiet. And I realized something. Peace isn't the absence of family drama. It's the decision not to invite it back in. I turned off the lights, locked the door, and whispered to the empty apartment, "Welcome home, Avery." And for the first time in months, it answered back with silence.